health promoters 1,300 na tumekubaliana na gavana wenu huyu ya kwamba yeye atawalipa marupurupu nusu, mimi nitalipa nusu. Tuhakikishe ya kwamba kuna muuguzi katika kila kijiji ya Kenya. Mambo ya matibabu ianze pale kwa bottom, ndio tusukume tukienda up, ama namna gani? Nimeanzisha hospitali ingine ambayo inaitwa Cancer Center, ambayo itakuwa mahali ambapo tutatumia katika region hii Center of Excellence kwa mambo ya cancer. Leo asubuhi ya bilioni 3.5 nimeanzisha hapa Kisii, na ndani ya mwaka 1.5 nitarudi hapa kuifungua. Nyinyi mnanielewa jameni? Mimi nimefurahi leo ya kwamba tumefungua hospitali mpya ya Keroka na tumeweka equipment. Tunaelewana jameni? Waswahili wanasema ahadi ni nini? Na dawa ya deni si ni kulipa. Mimi nimefurahi leo nimefika hapa kulipa deni ya watu wa Keroka.
Mimi nimekuwa sijafika hapa Kisii sana.
Enyewe.
Sawa, yusi Mbaraki tulikuwa tuelewani. Tulikuwa na yeye bunge. Tukakosana kwa sababu najua town iko mambo mingi. Si watu ya town wanakosana. Alafu yeye akatoroka town akakuja hapa kijiji. Sasa juzi tumeketi na yeye akaniambia, sasa wewe ulikuwa uniheshimu, sasa unaona mimi ni gavana. Akamwambia nimekuheshimu.
Your Excellency, karibu. Karibu. Hii mradi najua kwamba umeusukuma. Nilipoingia kwa ofisi nilikuja nikaketi na wewe. Ukaniambia unaenda Ethiopia kwa Badea kwa kwamba hawa watu wamepeana.
President William Ruto has asked leaders from various political affiliations to support the ongoing efforts to unite Kenyans for the sake of unity and transformation. The president appealed to leaders who do not support the broad-based government to do so in the spirit of patriotism. He said the unity and transformation of the country are more important than the selfish, personal and political interests of leaders. Speaking during his second day of a 3-day development tour of Kisii and Nyamira counties, President Ruto said tribal and sectoral politics was outdated.
Imefika wakati ambapo umoja wa nchi, maendeleo ya nchi ni muhimu kuliko mirengo, kuliko vyama, kuliko makabila, kuliko masehemu. Mimi nawauliza ndugu zangu watu wa Nyamira na watu wa Kisii, mnakubali tuungane ama mnataka tutengane? Nawauliza, mnasema tuungane ama tutengane jameni? Mnasema tuungane? Hebu nione wala wanasema tuungane. Mnasema tuungane? Kwa sababu mimi nataka niwaambie hivi. In the life of a nation, there comes a time when the greater interest of the nation, when the progress, prosperity, transformation of the nation is greater than the sectarian interest of parties and formations. It is greater than the interest, personal interest of leaders. And that is why I commend the leaders who have agreed out of patriotism for us to work together for the greater interest of the nation, forge unity that will give us the opportunity to build synergy and create a bigger transformation for our nation. I want to ask those leaders who still have doubts, I want to tell them there is a moment in the history of a nation when we must come together for the greater good, for the greater transformation of our nation called Kenya. And this is such a moment. Tumekubaliana jameni? Watu wa Kisii tumekubaliana? Mimi nataka niwaeleze kwa unyenyekevu, mimi nimekubali, tutafanya kazi na viongozi wenu wote. Hapa kwa hii mkutano tuko na Nyaribo, gavana wetu, tutafanya kazi na yeye. Hapa kwa hii mkutano tuko na Simba Arati Paulo, tutafanya kazi na yeye. Tuko na mjumbe wenu Manduku, tutafanya kazi na yeye. Tuko na mjumbe wenu Engoko, tutafanya kazi na yeye. Tuko na seneta wetu hapa Umongeni, tutafanya kazi na yeye. Ama mnasema tufanye namna gani? Tuendelee namna hiyo? Nifanye kazi na hawa viongozi wote kutoka MCA ndio tujenge Nyamira na tujenge Kisii na tujenge Kenya Hebu ni wale wanasema tushirikiane, tufanye kazi pamoja.
Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party leader Raila Odinga says that former President Uhuru Kenyatta urged him to speak with President William Ruto for the sake of unity in the country. Addressing the press on Tuesday, the opposition chief defended the formation of a broad-based government with President Ruto as he seemingly shifted the blame at Uhuru after Kenyans accused Odinga of betrayal.
Ruto alikuwa hapa, Uhuru alikuwa hapa, Uhuru na Mudavadi walikuwa naibu wangu kama waziri mkuu. Unajua na hiyo. Alafu William akawa pale, mimi nikaweka yeye waziri wa kilimo. Sio. Sasa ile nchi inachomeka, Uhuru ndiye alinipiga mimi simu. Uhuru akaniambia mimi tafuta Bwana Ruto, ongea na yeye. Kenya ikichomeka itakuwa nchi nyingine. Mpaka hii tuzime hii moto, watu waketi chini waendelee. William akanitafuta. Mimi nikaongea na yeye wazi kabisa. Mimi ndio mambo yangu, mimi sifiche mambo. Nasema direct. Magazeti hawa wanaandika sijui nini, Raila na Ruto handshake, hakuna handshake. Hakuna handshake. Kale tulisema mimi nimeongea na Ruto nikamwambia shida iko hapa. Hawa watu yako ambao wameweka pale hawajafanya kazi vile wananchi wanataka. Wananchi wameudhika, ninaona hawa sasa vijana wanajitokeza. Na vijana wakaniambia mimi, wewe baba kaa nyumbani. Usitoke, unafanya ya kutosha. Wacha sisi tuendelee. Sasa hawa vijana sio ndio wazimu. Nataka hii maneno yatutuliwe. Hawa watu ambao wameweka pale yote hawajafanya kazi sawa sawa. Ndio sababu hasira iko nyingi namna hii. Na tena hawa askari yako wanatumia nguvu zaidi. Unapiga watu risasi, watu ambao hawana silaha. Watu wanafanya majeraha namna hii. Kuna wengi wako hospitali na kadhalika. Hiyo inazidi kuleta hasira zaidi. Sasa askari wacha mbele kutumia risasi. Msuri kama watu waketi chini na waongee.
A woman and 4 children died in a road accident involving a private car and a truck on Tuesday morning at Mbaruk along the Nakuru-Nairobi highway. The Gilgil Sub-County Police Commander Jamlek Ngaruya stated that the Mercedes car was heading towards Nakuru when it collided head-on with a truck coming from the opposite direction. According to the police, the Mercedes driver was attempting to overtake another vehicle when it rammed or entered the truck's lane and rammed into the truck.
I'm Jamlek Ngaruya, the Sub-County Police Commander Gilgil. Why we are here is because today in the morning, the 13th August 2024, there was an accident within one of our areas called Baruk. It was exactly 07:00 hours. There was a Mercedes compressor, a saloon car, driven by one Abani from Gilgil to Nakuru. He left his lane to overtake. The other side, there was a lorry which was coming from Nakuru direction towards Gilgil, a Mercedes Actros. There was a head-on collision from both vehicles. And because of the impact of a small vehicle and a lorry, the small vehicle Mercedes had 6 occupants, the driver and 5, a woman and 4 children. The 5 lost their life on the spot, and the driver was taken to St. Joseph Hospital for treatment. He sustained a broken hand and a broken leg. He is in stable condition, and the bodies of the deceased, the 5 bodies of the deceased were removed from the scene to Gilgil Sub-County Hospital mortuary. Both the vehicles have been towed to the station for more investigation. At the moment, we have not reached. We are still following up so that we come up with a follow-up report. We to know the names and the age.
All right, let's take a look at the newspapers and what is making headlines this morning. So I'll kick it off with the Standard that speaks of Uhuru hand in Ruto Raila cabinet deal. Uhuru hand in Ruto Raila cabinet deal. Now, in spite of saying President William Ruto was the one who sought a deal between government and opposition, Raila Odinga yesterday claimed it was former President Uhuru Kenyatta who intervened to save the country. And I believe we've listened to that audio clip a bit earlier on of Raila Odinga, who revealed that as he was attending a burial of Mzee Chirchir Masit at Sitoto in Elgeyo Marakwet. And Masit was the father of former IBC Commissioner Irene Masit. However, one of the things he talked about was Uhuru's hand in their deal to form a broad-based government. And he says, you know, it was Uhuru's call that began all these broad-based government prospects between himself and the President Raila Odinga. He also further says that President William Ruto, you know, was making steps or approaching him and his team so that they can work together to ease the country of the uncertainty that was being witnessed within the month of June and the start of July. Now, former President Uhuru Kenyatta asked opposition Chief Raila Odinga to dialogue with President William Ruto at the height of chaotic Gen Z protests, the ODM leader has revealed. Raila said Uhuru called him in the wake of deadly demos and requested that he speaks to Ruto. Speaking for the first time since the formation of the broad-based government, Raila said the country was burning and he stepped in to quell tensions. He said he believed that dialogue would save the country and from plunging into more chaos. And if we go back to the press statement that former President Uhuru Kenyatta gave out, particularly after the June 25th attack on Parliament, or at least the invasion by protesters of Parliament, that press statement, if you go back to it, you'll be able to see the words dialogue very clearly, as he called on leaders from both particular divides and both sides to come together and speak. And no, it's not just about the two sides, but also for the government and those protesting to be able to speak. So the word dialogue was there in that particular press statement, and perhaps it is what started this particular journey of formation of a broad-based government. Now, according to Raila, he also called for the unity of the country while complimenting Gen Z as true patriots. He said during his meeting with Ruto, he told him about the challenges ailing the country that necessitated the Gen Z demos. He also said the youth are protesting about genuine issues, including the high cost of living, unemployment, persistent corruption, tribalism, and the heavy debt burden. And so that was what Raila Odinga revealed yesterday, which of course makes it to the headline this morning, Uhuru's hand in Ruto Raila cabinet deal. Also, MPs in new plot to cut Gachagua down to size. MPs in new plot to cut Gachagua down to size. And that is a story that is on page 6 of the Standard this morning that speaks of Gachagua's critics in new scheme after abandoning impeachment. The cessation of hostilities seen as just a change of tack, and more than 60 MPs met President Ruto at State House last week. Now, the battle of titans between Ruto and his deputy is far from over. Despite a truce announced after a State House visit by close to 60 MPs from Gachagua's backyard announcing a ceasefire against the besieged second in command, the Standard has established that cessation of hostilities was just a change of tack. Now, before the Saturday meeting, Gachagua had been described by some Ruto's allies as a dead man walking because of a planned impeachment, but this has since changed. The frontal attack has been abandoned in favor of more subtle ways that will not lionize the DP and make political martyr. The impeachment was brought to a halt after the head of state summoned Mount Kenya leaders and convinced them to drop the ouster bid due to what sources termed as Gachagua's ability to turn the tide in his favor by playing the victim, which may hit President Ruto re-election campaign in 2027. So the wars are far from over. Well, you won't hear about an impeachment motion, but definitely what you'll hear about is perhaps being sidelined or just more verbal attacks from Ruto's ally as Gachagua's critics in new scheme after abandoning impeachment. So there's likely to be more drama that will be following up in the coming days. Also, Ruto hints at return of aspects of the Finance Bill 2024 after it was withdrawn. And this is something that the CS for Treasury, John Mbadi, has also reiterated and saying there are some of the progressive amendments of the finance bill which should come back, including the tax relief, the tax amnesty as well. So that is the headline on top of the Standard. Now to the Daily Nation this morning that speaks of you are on your own over high power bills. You are on your own over high power bills. Too hot to handle. Well, Kenyans will have to dig deeper into their pockets to purchase electricity. The National Assembly last year launched an investigation into the high cost of power and tasked a committee chaired by Mwala Member of Parliament Vincent Musyoka to present a report within 120 days on how to cushion consumers from the high cost of living of power. But believe it or not, a year later, there's no clear roadmap on how to bring down power prices. And so the House team has gobbled up millions in allowances, but no fruits have been, born from those particular investigation reports. So last April, which is April 2023, the National Assembly passed a motion sponsored by Laikipia Woman Rep Jane Kagiri that effectively triggered investigation by Parliament over the high cost of living. The committee in charge was tasked to look into factors affecting the cost of electricity, including over-reliance on IPPs, those are independent power producers, against available renewable and other energy sources, and provide measures to reduce it. A week later, the National Assembly Committee on Energy started meeting various stakeholders within the energy sector with a view of finding solution to the crisis. The committee, which was chaired by Mwala MP Vincent Musyoka, was to conduct an inquiry and present a report to Parliament within 120 days with clear recommendations on how to cushion consumers from the high cost of power. It held its first meeting on June 15th last year, but it's been 1 year, 2 months without a clear roadmap of how to bring down electricity prices. Well, you and I both know that for these committees to meet, or just that particular sitting, there's allowances that come up from it, allowances of the chairperson of the committee, allowances of the vice chairperson of the committee, as well as allowances of members of that particular committee. Well, majority of members in Parliament belong to a certain committee. So Musyoka did not respond to messages on the progress of the inquiry from the nation when a report should be expected. However, the committee vice chair Leman Kenaramat said the report will be tabled next week, despite the House being scheduled to start recess this Friday. So that is where it is at as of now. Still no clear roadmap on how to reduce the cost of electricity in the country. The independent power producers, can they be regulated, or what exactly is the problem in terms of also the Kenya Power and Lighting Company, that is KPLC, as well as the Energy, Petroleum and Regulatory Authority. So still no roadmap yet. So you are on your own over high power bills until that report is stable, until the regulations are put in place. You are on your own. That's the headline on top of the page. Also, it speaks of Raila. Uhuru asked me to reach out to Ruto. Azimio leader says a phone call from former President Uhuru Kenyatta made him and President William Ruto agree on a broad-based government to salvage the country. Also, death of Bishop Muge, Moi drama and row over the Kenyatta Memorial. Well, this one takes you back into the years, arguably, which were one of the hardest years in Kenya's history under the regime or the reign of former and the late President Daniel Arap Moi. And it also reveals that Bishop Muge was one of the critics of Ruto's regime and policies succumbed to arguably one of the most, questionable ways to die. It was through a road accident, but, fears have been that it was actually a planned accident. So the nation has been able to do that story on the death of Bishop Muge, Moi drama, and draw over the Kenyatta Memorial. So those are your headlines on the papers this morning. All right, so allow us to take a quick breather, but when we come back, we'll be getting into the conversation this morning surrounding the youth and Kenya's future. A broad-based government has now been formed, but, is there any space for the youth to occupy some of these positions, which are very much, would say, open to anyone from any particular, political divide to be able to get into those spaces? So we'll be taking a look at that, as well as this Gen Z protests have lost its momentum. How do they gain it back, and in a legal way, as well as in a peaceful way, to ensure that they are also conducting peaceful protests and that looters are not, taking advantage of this? So there's so much we're going to discuss around the youth and the future of Kenya's political landscape, putting in mind that the landscape itself keeps on changing more often than not. So when it stabilizes, if it ever stabilizes, will they be able to get their spaces in it? So that conversation returns in a bit. Stay with us. Morning Live returns. With the government in place, we can see a lot of dialogues happening around us between the government and the opposition. But is there any opportunity for the youth to also be part of these particular dialogues? Actually, the question is, are they interested in this dialogues that keeps on happening with the government? Because it seems we're in that place and time right now in the country where people are willing to sit down and speak with those whom they do not agree with in terms of policies, reforms, politics as well in the country. So we'd love to understand that and much more this morning. I'm joined in studio by Leon Harun, who's a political analyst and commentator. Asante sana, Leon, for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me, Cynthia, and good morning.
Good morning, you're welcome. Now, we'll begin off perhaps with just the headline on the pages this morning, that is on the Standard, that speaks of, Uhuru's hand in the unity, I'd call it, between Raila Odinga and President William Ruto. Well, they've said it's not a handshake. They've said it's not a coalition government. What they are terming it is a government of national unity, or a broad-based government. And, previously Uhuru's name, or the former President Uhuru Kenyatta's name, was not anywhere in the picture, but somehow it has now come up. And Odinga says, it was Uhuru's phone call that prompted this whole start to the broad-based government. From where you sit, is it possible that the former head of state made that call, and to what, extent is he involved in this particular broad-based government?
Thank you, Cynthia. In my own opinion, I think the former president might have made the call. Because you remember that day, on that particular Tuesday, the entire political foundation of this nation was shaken to a point that no politician in the country felt safe. Yeah. And when it came to that point that the whole country was almost going to civil unrest, we were almost having a civil coup. When it came to that point, I would believe that the former president might have called upon the former premier to now have a dialogue with the president, not on the matters of forming a government, right, but on the matters of at least, if you remember that night, the statement that the president had issued was that of an angry person, a very tough person, a person who was now ready for a fight. But the following morning, there was a change of the tone. There was a change of the tone. So if you look at it, maybe the former president had called the former premier to tell him that you should advise this young brother of ours that this is not the way to take the nation. We are not ready for a fight. We might be having a very tough time as a country, but now advise the former president that this isn't, not the former president, the current president, that this isn't the time for a fight. That this is a time that we call for the nation to come together, for us to dialogue as a country. But now what I believe is that the conversation maybe that the president had with the former opposition leader, allow me to use that word, with the former opposition. Yes.
Why do you refer to him as former?
Because in the country right now we don't have an opposition.
We have Azimio, we have Kalonzo Musyoka who are still in place. We've seen them meet with Raila Odinga.
The country does not have an opposition. The opposition has officially, what we can say, the most compact opposition has been separated, disintegrated. So we can say that we had a former opposition. Because you see, when the opposition agrees with what the government is saying, when the opposition agrees to join the government, that means that the opposition is in the government. What can they then oppose? So Cynthia was saying, when the former president reached out to the former premier, it was on the matters, let us come together to avoid more bloodshed, to avoid more demonstrations, to avoid going to setting up a war between the civilians, the politicians, the police, and the army. You remember that was the first time in the history of this nation that the army had been called to intervene.
Yeah.
That was the first time. So I believe if the former president made that call, it was not for the purpose of us having that, what they are calling now, the broad-based government. Yes.
All right, so now that you say it is a possibility that the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, made that call.
Yes.
The question is now, to what extent is he involved in this particular broad-based government? Because that means ultimately, perhaps he's being consulted on one or two things here and there. So to what extent is he now involved? Because he initiated this particular step. He made that call. There's a dialogue that began. There's a broad-based government that was formed. So to what extent is he involved?
To the extent that, in my opinion, I would say that the former president is involved to the extent of only making that call. But whatever has happened past that, I would say is not a part of it, from the look of things. But because you've realized from that call to dialogue with the government.
Yeah.
From then, from the dissolving of the cabinet to the now appointing of the new cabinet,
yes,
we've not had the name of the former president being mentioned. But only yesterday, or the day before yesterday, that now the former opposition leader, Raila Odinga, says that now, for me to be in this position, for me to be in this place, it was the former president who initiated. But now, I don't believe that he's now being consulted fully. And if he's being consulted, then it is only by the former premier, Raila Odinga. Probably is being consulted. He's being consulted by one person, and that would be the former premier. Because you've had the invitation by the deputy president to the former president that let us dialogue let us dialogue and have a dialogue as the people of Mount Kenya. But the former president has stayed clear on commenting of such an issue. The former president has now distanced himself from the current government. If you have realized, he has distanced himself fully.
Yeah.
If he's being consulted, only when consulted by the Azimio leader, asking him on a few things, on this, but not by the government. That is what I would say.
But then again, this statement changes the whole perspective of what exactly happened after the June 25th, invasion of Parliament, because initially it began with President William Ruto, according to Raila Odinga, saying Ruto was the one that reached out to him to make this dialogue happen. And so it changes the perspective on whether or not they were honest to Kenyans about who exactly began this dialogue and to whose benefit was it, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. You realize, that's what I've said, in this nation currently, it is almost impossible to believe in politicians. They will say this thing today, and then tomorrow they will say another thing. Because if you remember, when the former premier was at Toy Market, telling the people what had actually transpired, he said that the president came to me crying on his knees, please help me save this country. But now you realize the same person now says that the former president had earlier called me to initiate a talk. So who do we believe? Is it the president that went begging, or is it the former president that now called for the former premier to intervene? But Cynthia, what we have lacked in this nation is the politics of integrity. That is what we have lacked as a nation. Because you realize lying has become a part of Kenyan politics. Lying has become an integral, not actually a part, an integral part of the Kenyan politics. Where a person can say this today, and then the same person says this tomorrow.
It is only a lie that is being believed. Is
yes,
that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying. But you see, the ultimate loser in the entire conversation, the ultimate loser were the demonstrators. Is the Gen Z were the ultimate losers. Because after the dialogue, what did we see? Actually, it was a total mockery of what was being advocated for. A total mockery of what the people that had gone to the streets were going to protest about. They had called for the government to be accountable. The accountability did not mean now we kill the opposition. The accountability did not mean now we take the opposition and bring it to government. I understood what they were saying right. We just needed a government that would say, we are doing this with this amount of money. No amount of money is being misappropriated for personal use. But now what happened? After the demonstrations, of course, you know, the politicians of this nation have learned the art of capitalizing, the art of being opportunistic. And we saw that with what has happened. People capitalized on that and now moved into the government. And you know, our president is one person who is a political genius. He read the situation. And if you've heard him, Cynthia, he has countlessly said, I have invited every person to this table so that I am not called Zakayo alone. What does that mean? It means that the purpose of me inviting you is for me to save me. Is for me to save me, not to save the country. Is for me to save me from being called from being called as a person who has ruined the economy of this country. That I now bring you together, I now bring you into this government so that we can continue, or rather we can ruin this government more. Right. That is what I've understood.
Yeah, and you've said that the Gen Zs were the biggest losers.
Yes.
From the results of the demonstrations. From where you sit, if they were to be the winners, what would have been the best case and scenario, or at least what would have been the country's situation looking like if they had won, or if they had been the winners from the results of the demonstrations?
The best case scenario would have been not retaining even a single CS from the previous, dissolved cabinet. That would have been the best scenario. And the other thing that the government, or rather the president, would have done. Cynthia, if you listen to what the president had said before the appointment of the CSs, he said that I have listened, I have heard. But now the question is, what did he hear? Because honestly and genuinely, I do not think that the president heard what the nation was saying. If he heard, he did not understand. And if he understood, he decided to ignore. The best case scenario would have been bringing in a new faces without traces of corruption, faces that are not of questionable characters, faces that would have represented the face of the nation, the faces that have at least bring in someone who has a track record of doing things and implementing things for the public goodwill of the nation. Cynthia, what happened after dissolving the parliament? You realize that the protesters and the entire nation realized that at least the president had had. And we as a country were expecting that the president would have made, at least the president was given a clean slate. Yeah. A clean slate to start from, where without making political favors, without making political appointments, he had a clean slate to say, now this slate has been given to me by the public, by the entire people of Kenya. Now here, Mr. President, write yourself a future for this nation. But what future did he write using the past? There was no future that was written. He went in and brought in the political favors that the people were demonstrating about. The people had called the president to accountability. You cannot take political rejects and now appoint them to the positions of the cabinet and expect them, people that are people that the public had in the first place said that we do not want you, and now appoint them to lead a whole cabinet, to lead a ministerial level. The president failed this nation. The president failed the Gen Z because they served him with a clean slate that he would have made the correct appointments, and should his political friends ask him, why did you do this? He would have said, it is not up to me. This
it's up to the people.
Is up to the people. The people brought us to this level where now we don't have to make political favors. We have to make appointments for the development and for the moving forward of this nation. But the president did what? I have listened, I have heard, I have understood, but I will go and appoint my fellow politicians to come then and fill in. But Cynthia, you realize, by the time the demonstration began at a very slow rate, and then eventually everyone realized that this nation, it is time that we take matters into our own hands as a people of this nation. That we tell the government that does not listen, we tell them, listen to us. This is what we are going through. We bring the matters to us. If truly the president had heard, he would not have made the same mistake. They say that a mistake is a mistake when done once. When it is repeated, it becomes a habit. So when you go appointing doing political favors for people who are not a part of this demonstration, for people who did not understand even what the Gen Z were demonstrating about, for people who sat in their houses and watched the entire demonstrations unfold, you realize it was a total betrayal to the Gen Z. They lost. Right. The best thing that the president would have done, he would have at least appointed in his cabinet a youthful person.
Well, there's one.
Yes, there's one. But simply you ask yourself, where is he from? And who does he know? I do not want to accuse anyone. I do not want to say that he has political connections. But if you look at the people that were demonstrating, I would have said that would have been the best time to say, now, you people are online making noises. You people are saying that we are not doing this and this. We are not doing the right thing. Why can't we then bring you on board and have at least 3, 4, 5 in the cabinet, so that if we fail, you shall also be accountable to the people that you led in the demonstration. You shall also be answerable to the people that you were in the demonstrations with. Then you shall betray the cause of the same people that you are with. But now what we've done is something called a bribe. A bribe. The Gen Zs have been bribed with one person, with one nominee, and the bribe is not. If you realize, the people that are demonstrating, no one would not say that they are rich. Yeah. Would not say that they had nothing to do. But Cynthia, you realize, none of them would claim to have a net worth of 31 million. No. So Cynthia, the Gen Zs would have had at least 3, 4, or 5 appointments. So they have lost. But I think they have considered the battle to win the war. And I know what is going to happen is that they will have a mobilization of let us go and register as voters, so that we can now also register our disappointment with the current government when the time comes. We shall also listen to the president as sells his agenda. We shall also listen to those that will be vying as they sell their agendas. And we shall also show them that we have heard and we have understood them correctly by voting all of them out.
Right. Now, I'll take you back a bit to something you said a bit earlier. Yes. And that was on the demonstrations, which began at a slow rate, yes, picked up. We saw a couple of weeks consistently with where they were demonstrating, and then got to a point where looters, invaded the demos, and what we were seeing was destruction of property. And then essentially what happened next was that less people, less youths were going to the streets to demonstrate. And we can rightfully put it that, the demos have lost the momentum, or at least the youths have lost that momentum, because perhaps being discouraged from the appointments that were made, they're seeing, their voices are not being heard, and we'll come to that. But now, if the head of state had done something contrary to what they wanted, what we would have expected was that the momentum would have picked up and more people would have, voiced their dissent over that and gone to the streets. But what we saw was that they would do it online, but on the streets they weren't there. And so as we see it right now, if the demonstrations, you'd hear them being called on Tuesday, but less people would go out and actually demonstrate. And so they've lost that momentum. Why is that case? And if at all they're to be taken seriously in future demonstrations, how should they maintain that kind of momentum?
Cynthia, you realize that the people who are in the demonstrations are not ignoramus. They are well educated. They are people with knowledge. When it came to a point that the demonstrations that were peaceful now turned chaotic, turned into looting, and it has been said, even the president has confirmed that it was not the demonstrators that were looting. It was not the original demonstrators that were looting. It was not the Gen Z that were looting. No. When the demonstration was now taken over by some people, some goons that probably had been paid to come and tarnish the name of the demonstrators. They say that sometimes the best decision is to take a step back. That even a fool knows when to retreat. Cynthia, when it came to a point that we called for demonstrations and people now coming using the name of demonstrations, they began to loot, and then the killing spree began. I believe it is not that the demonstrations lost its momentum. It is a tactical retreat. It is a tactical retreat. Which in my point, I would say that the Gen Z noticed that people are invading our space, our demonstration, to come and cause havoc, so that we also appear as a part of this havoc, as a part of this looting. So I believe they took a tactical retreat to avoid the goons issue. And at the same time, you realize, Cynthia, it was all over in the mainstream media that now goons were being paid to come and stop the demonstrators. It was now very evident that at the point that the demonstrations had gotten to, we were turning almost chaotic. Right. We were turning almost, we were almost coming to blow as a nation. So what do you do? And I really wish to commend the leaders of the Gen Z for taking that tactical retreat, because had the demonstrations escalated, this nation would not be here where it is right now. This nation would have at least plunged into chaos. But Cynthia, you also realize that, as I said earlier, that the demonstrations were not being carried out by goons. The demonstrations were organized. The demonstrations were very, very peaceful, until it came to a point that now some people realize that these demonstrations, you cannot shoot them because they are only armed with a whistle and the flag of the Republic of Kenya. You cannot shoot such a person, and even that person is marching towards a public place. That is the parliament. You cannot shoot such a person. And then when it was realized that then these people had won the heart of everyone in Kenya, because the demonstrations were peaceful. Then other people sat down, conspired, and now brought in the goons that were now looting, and the demonstrations turned chaotic. And when it came to a point that lives were being lost unnecessarily, then a tactical retreat was unavoidable. Yes.
Now, let's talk about their voices then. These particular youths and their voices. Well, it was hard because had it not been hard, perhaps the finance bill would not have been withdrawn, the cabinet would not have been dissolved, so they were hard. But as you said earlier, it depends on what the head of state had, because also the people that got back into the cabinet were people that, the masses did not really want them back into the cabinet. And so how do they now ensure that their voices continue to be heard consistently? Because that consistency is where the biggest problem is at. Because what we're looking at is a situation where right now the youths will definitely be heard. Perhaps, people are more careful of who they are appointing to various offices. Those in public offices are more careful in things that they engage in, businesses that they engage in, activities that they engage in. But the question is now consistency. How do the youths ensure that their voices are heard consistently and that the government will keep on acting accordingly consistently?
Well, Cynthia, the youths must not relent in holding the government accountable. And you've seen using social media, and the current Gen Zs are well informed in matters technology. They are well informed. You've seen using social media, they brought some sort of accountability. Well, allow me to quote. When the CS for sports currently, Kipchumba Murkomen, when he was being sworn in, or when he was being interviewed for the role of the CS for sports, he went on record and apologized for something that now the youth had used social media against him, and he unreservedly apologized. And I don't believe that the current CS for sports would go and do the same mistake that he did in the previous time that he was the current for the CS for infrastructure. The youths must then, using the same social media, the same platforms, must also not relent in holding this government accountable. Because now, the demonstrations that would have called for by the youths have been invaded by the goons. So I advocate and I advise that the youth must use the social media spaces that are very impactful to now call for the performance and the responsibility and the accountability of the government going forward. Right,
Leon, we've got one aspect of social media, yes, but we've also got aspects of where the actual policies and reforms are made, and those are in various offices, in boardrooms, in various tables where policies and reforms are signed, where people sit and actually discuss this. So how do they get themselves now? They can do social media, yes, but how can they get themselves into those particular kind of rooms to be at the center of policy changes, reform changes, political changes as well?
How, Cynthia, that's a seriously tricky question. Now, these people cannot get themselves in there, because you realize that the places where decisions are made, they are made by by the appointees of some people. For them to get in there, they will have to be appointed. That's why I've said the best way for them to get in there is to hold those that the government has appointed to accountability. That is the best way that they remain there. The other best way is for the president to appoint them in some positions. But that is that.
So one youthful CS is not enough.
It is. I said that was a bribe. It is not enough. So what the president would have done, all right, the positions for the cabinet secretary is about 22. All right.
Yeah.
I will give that to my political friends. But at least let us have appointments in the parastatals. Let us have appointment of these youthful leaders. Let us have appointments of this youth so that they also become an integral part of changing the destiny of this nation. But you see, Cynthia, I've always asked myself, who advises this government? And if there is an advisor, does the government listen? No, they don't. Because you've seen that now Kenya is proposing that they have a proposal that now we have to pay for the roads that we've been using for free.
Yeah.
Cynthia, don't you think that is actually a poke in the eye? That maybe a poke in the eye to the people that were demonstrating. Is that not an invitation for now the people to go back on streets? So I'm wondering, who makes this policy? What makes them think about the policy that they're about to pass? And that's why I'm insisting, Cynthia, that it is imperative, it is very important that the president invites or appoints some of the people that have a real connection with the current Gen Z. Appoint them. So into those positions. So that they make decisions according to what is good both for the country and good both for the youths of this nation.
Right. So I'd love us to listen into something that Lucas Maitha, who's the Secretary General of the Pamoja African Alliance, hinted on a bit earlier. And we'll come back to this and I'll get your view on this, Harun, because he says the youths now need to stop this partyless mantra and actually get into political parties. And so let's listen into what Lucas Maitha, the Pamoja African Alliance Secretary General, said before we can come back and get Harun's voice as well.
Lakini kama sisi hatutakuwa na mazoea ya kujikusanya, tuwe na political capital, tuonekane, we might not even benefit from the revolution ambayo tumeleta sisi wenyewe. Na mimi nataka kuambia kuanzia sasa, the real change bado haijakuja. The real change will be you youth people join a political movement kama mnatoka this region, join hii, alafu viti inayokuja musimame viti vya siasa. I'm the Secretary General, nitawapa matikiti. That is the real revolution.
So that's Lucas Maitha, who's the Secretary General of the Pamoja African Alliance. And Leon, he says, if you really want to get a real change or to have real change, join a political movement. Whichever that you choose, you join a political movement. But we have got Gen Zs who are running on the mantra of partyless. They do not belong to any political party or any side of the political divide. Does that work in their favor, or should they actually be part of political parties and just be at the center of calling for reforms from within the political party?
My opinion has always been that a party man is a slave. So, Cynthia, when the political party wants you to do something, you must not go against it. I agree to disagree that they should be in a political party. I feel that the partless form is excellent. The part that I disagree with is the leaderless part and the faceless part. But the partless form is very good. Because when you are not a member of a political party, you are not bound, you are not restricted by the guidelines and the decisions of the political party. Cynthia, the reason why we have the minority and the majority whips in parliament, they whip the members of parliament to vote how the party wants, not how they want, how the party wants, and to vote in favor of whatever the party proposes. And then you cannot go against the party. So I feel that we need to come to a place as a country that we vote people who are not members of a certain political party, but we vote for people who can deliver. Cynthia, you've realized that it has been reported that the Gen Z political party has had at least 300 attempts of being registered by people who are not members of the Gen Z and of the Gen Z demonstrations. About 300 attempts of being registered as a political party. But now it was turned down for not meeting what they call the national cohesion. Cynthia, the issue of Gen Zs joining political parties, that one I disagree with totally. I feel that let us have a face of this nation. Yes, let political parties be there. Let us continue having multi-party democracy. But let us also have a space for people who do not feel that they want to be chained by the decisions of the party. They want to be slaves and captives of political parties.
Well, they can form their own political parties, essentially. And
eventually they will become slaves to that party. And eventually, let's say, for instance, we register a Gen Z political party. And then we have a Gen Z president who wants things to be done his own way. And then he will whip his members to do things in a particular way. What I'm saying is that a party man is always a slave to the party. You've seen yourself. Allow me to date back to when the current governor for Siaya, Orengo, was a senator. I remember him knocking his head, saying, I will vote yes. I will vote yes. But in me, I should have voted no. But what did he vote yes? There was a political party that had whipped them into voting to a systematic, to a particular way. So I feel that is a nice call. But I also feel that we should have a place and a space for people who do not want political parties, like the Gen Z. They do not want to be associated with any political party. Let us have a partless nation, so that people can vote using their brains, not using what their leaders said. Let's say, for instance, today, Cynthia, I am voted in as a member of parliament for a particular constituency, and I am not influenced influenced, I am not affected, I am not conformed to a particular party. I shall therefore be very able to make independent decisions that are not dependent on what the government or what my party is saying. Cynthia, we've seen good policies being shot down, or rather being shot at by some members of some parties. Why? Because their party has said, in as much as this is a good policy, but we, for instance, we do not agree with the government, therefore we shall say no to this, to whatever the government is saying. Not that it is wrong, not that it is bad for the nation, but because our political party do not agree with the government, or rather do not agree with whoever has brought the motion to parliament, then we as a party, we shall vote in this particular way. Therefore, I feel the party slavery mentality should now be wiped out, and then we have a new phase where we have people can vote independently, people can vote vote using their own judgment, not according to the judgment of a particular person who will say, I am the leader of this party, and you are voted in and elected because of this party, therefore you shall vote according to what the party wants. Right. Yes.
All right, you've said, you would prefer it to be partyless, the movement.
Yes.
But you'd want it to also be to not be leaderless, but to actually have a leader.
Yes.
So let's talk about now that particular mantra of being leaderless.
Yes.
And if at all they want to be heard, how they can change that. Because what we saw was that the head of state was open to dialoguing by when he formed this multi-sectoral forum that will be at the center of leading the discussions, and there was about 50 youths who had been given an opportunity to actually be part of the forum, and unfortunately the forum didn't kick off or never even started. And so how do they change that leaderless mantra? And if at all they are to have a leader, then what sort of leader should it be? Should it just be a Gen Z, or no, somebody that is still a Gen Z? Should it be somebody that is at least on the next level, that is a millennial? And then what sort of, I'd say characters will they be looking for to be their leader? And what will they be expecting from this leader? And are the Gen Z even open to having a leader for that matter?
Well, I believe, to start with your last question, the Gen Zs are very open to having a leader.
A leader.
Yes, very open. But now the trouble kicks in when we say who will be the leader. That becomes an issue. And I believe it's an issue that will be sorted before the next election. I am sure that issue will be sorted before the next election. One thing I believe, the leader must not be a Gen Z. The leader must be a person who resonates. Who resonates
with the Gen Z, but not a Gen Z.
If there's a real leader, there's a Gen Z who can lead. Let him lead. But if there's a leader who resonates with the Gen Z, with the cry that is that is now evident in the whole nation, that person might also come in and lead the Gen Z. The question of which leader should now lead the Gen Z, that's where I've said that's where the crisis will kick in. Because we've always known, someone will say that I am leading the Gen Z. Another person will come in and say, I'm also leading the Gen Z. So what I'm saying is that the same way that the demonstrations were organized can be used to now organize for a forum where they will dialogue and have their own leader. Because you cannot continue to be leaderless. Because Cynthia, you realize that the president invited the leaders to have a dialogue. Not even a single person would claim that I'm the leader to the Gen Z. But also I feel like you cannot have a hidden knife under the table and invite me for conversation. Whatever I disagree with what you're saying, you will stab me to death. That's why I believe that's why the Gen Z did not go for that multi-sectoral forum. I believe that that's why they did not go. The question of the millennials, you realize, Cynthia, that the millennials were also part of the Gen Zs that were demonstrating. You cannot say that it was the Gen Z only that were demonstrating. That the millennials were also a part of the Gen Z. What I'm saying is that a leader must be found. a leader must be brought forth. That leader must not, it's not compulsory that the leader must be a Gen Z. It might be a millennial. But what I say and what I feel, Cynthia, that any person that has been a part of the opposition previously, a part of the government previously, I'm saying the current government going backwards. They should not be leaders to the Gen Z. There should not be a part or a party to the Gen Z movement. If there's going to be a movement that is going to be to change this country and scale it forward, is the Gen Z, because they resonate with the current problems of the world, the current problems of the nation, and the current problems of the people of this nation. So going forward, the Gen Zs must also bring us a leader. They must say that we have agreed to be led by this person, from which now the people, and I'm sure, Cynthia, come 2027, people will not forget. I've told you that the current population in this nation is well informed. They have facts in their fingertips, so they will not forget.
Right.
Should they bring forward a leader, then I believe the millennials will support that leader, because no one wants anything to do with the current leadership of this nation. Let us have a total clear up of the leadership of this nation and start afresh as a country.
Yeah. Now, one thing that also stood out within this period when the youths were calling out for the reforms, I'll say youths because we had mixture of Gen Z and millennials,
yes,
was that they wanted a total overhaul of the old guards in politics to just go,
yes,
you know. And I'm calling them old guards because it's people that have been there for a long time. They've achieved, you know, various things within the political landscape. They're, you know, quite aged a bit. And so they wanted that old guards, all old guards, you know, the names we keep on seeing in every election cycle, the names that have been there to go. And they wanted new people, new faces, new names to come in.
yes.
But is Kenya's political landscape ready for that? Are we ready to welcome that? You know, we'll not talk about Ruto anymore. We won't talk about the Odingas. We won't talk about Musyoka. We won't talk about Martha Karua. We won't keep on talking about Raphael Tuju. And the names we keep on seeing, you know, making news, or what we call newsmakers in the headlines, but rather would have new names. For instance, Leon. Is Kenya's political landscape ready for that?
To answer that question, allow me also to ask you a question. And it is rhetorical. It is rhetorical.
Okay.
It is rhetorical.
Yeah.
Cynthia, was the nation ready for parliament invasion? Had it ever happened before? No, it hadn't. So if you ask me, as a country, are we ready? Yes. And if not this election, and if not the year 2027, then the year 2032, we are going to deal with the old guards. All of them should should actually exit the stage. They say that a good actor knows when to leave the stage. Now, these politicians have been there for very long time. That some of them, we also got umezaliwa, ukapata kwa TV, you've grown up, the same person on your TV. Now you are growing old, the same person on your... No, I believe a time has come that we do a total overhaul, starting with I have said earlier that if anyone has been a part of the KANU regime, in the opposition, in the government, it is time for them to pack and leave. For them to pack and go. If such a future realizable, yes, it is, Cynthia. It is very realizable. There comes a time that people must do away with the tribal decline. But people must do away with Mutu Wetu syndrome and now come to a point where we say it is time for us to do this for our country. It is time for us to do this for the sake of this nation. That said, having said that, Cynthia, and notwithstanding, allow me to say this.
Yeah.
At the same time, we also need a direction. Should that such a time come, we will also need a direction as to which direction that the nation will take, because you cannot. We can have a total overhaul, but we'll have them for consultation. What should we do here? Should things now should we now need direction? We'll go to them for consultation. But such a future is realizable starting with this coming election. And I'm telling you, Cynthia, and I assure you, it shall be a shock to Atuli says, watu watajinyonga. Miti itakatwa. The reason as to why I'm saying that is because there's going to be a good change in this country.
Yeah.
That the same anger that the Gen Zs had shown in the streets, the same amount of frustrations, these people are going to register as voters, and we shall have a clear up in this country that has never been witnessed before.
Right. Do you know why I've asked that?
Yes.
Leon, this is because as much as we'll keep on talking about the youths who are the future of the country, and you know, they run up to 2027 elections now on whether or not they will have got that wake-up call, go out, do civic education, take their voters card, be part of the voting system come 2027, is because they're also those who would call our parents and our grandparents who still hold a particular stake in the voters registrar, whether it was in 2022 or will be in 2027, because they're also still part of the voting system. And so the reason I've asked that is because, yes, we've got youths who are the largest percentage in Kenya's republic, but if lessons are to be learned, then it should be on 2022 elections, and the fact that not most of them actually went out and voted. They did take their voters card, they did go out to vote, but the larger percentage of the, you know, I don't know what age bracket I'd call it, but those whom we'd call our parents, our aunties, you know, went out and vote. And so if lessons aren't to be learned, it should be on 2022, and that, yes, the youths, they hold the largest percentage, but they need to now take action by taking the voters card and actually voting rather than leaving it to the others.
The reason as to it happened like that in the year 2022 is because the youths believe that they cannot change this country. But now with the demonstrations and what has happened, they are more convinced now more than ever that we can change this country. That's why I'm telling you, the political landscape will change, will shift come 2027.
All right.
In the past, they believed that we cannot change. Now they believe we have seen.
Anything is possible.
We have seen. We can. I assure you that nowhere in the continent of Africa has a president been forced by demonstrators to reshuffle his cabinet. Nowhere. But these youths have forced our president. You must now listen to us. And the president listened. The understanding part, I will leave it to the president. Now, what I'm saying, Cynthia, is they believe we've been there. We've seen that. It is time now we come in and do what is expected of us. What is it that is expected of us is for us to go out and vote. And if you've listened to them clearly, they are saying that our parents have been intimidated. Our parents have voted in a particular way. Come there 2027. Let our parents stay at home. And you've heard them say,
do the voting.
You've heard them say that we will hide their IDs. They shall not vote. Let our parents stay at home. Allow us to fix this nation, because you've seen that we can. We've seen that we will. Therefore, we shall. And I assure you, Cynthia, I don't know why I'm convicted. I don't know why I feel deep conviction. That within this country, we are going to experience a change that has never been experienced before.
Right.
Come the year 2027, we are going to have a majority, a very good majority of independent members of parliament that will not be affiliated to political parties. Should the Gen Z not register a political party? Because they have seen, they have been betrayed. They have experienced the same thing over and over again. And Cynthia, I've said this and I will say it again. The reason as to why these people went out on streets, they have grown up seeing their parents being harassed. They have grown up being their parents being threatened. That if you do this, we shall do this. They have grown up to a point that their parents have been rendered powerless. They have come to the rescue of the parents. And that's why the parents will take a back step and allow the youths to go and vote.
Right.
That's why I feel that come 2027, this nation is going to experience, in a very great way, a wind of change. And this, I say, should they not have a serious political president, a political person for the president, for the presidency? Then I believe the next president, whoever it may be, will have the toughest time of their lives. Because these youths are going to change the political landscape. na wataanza polepole. They will start with changing the members of parliament to the people that will think and resonate with them.
Right.
And then when the president shall have no other option than to work with a majority that are independent, then we shall have said that the wind of change has kicked into the country. So that probably come by the year 2032, I am sure this nation will see a president who is not from the KANU regime. A president who is not from the regime that is now that is the likes of Kalonzo Musyoka, the likes of Musalia Mudavadi, the likes of the current president, the likes of the deputy president. The entire lot must cease to exist politically come to the year 2027 and give space
for the others.
That's why I've insisted.
Right.
And I'm convicted. We might not have the president that we want come 2027, but we shall have the members of parliament that we want, the members of parliament that will vote straight, the members of parliament that shall not be whipped to a political party, and the members of parliament that can hold the president to accountability. That is what I feel, and that is what I have seen that will happen in the future.
All right, so Leon, we're out of time. We've got just 1 minute to wrap it up, and I'd love to get your final view. You've clearly put it that what you're envisaging as 2027 is that, there may be a lot of independent candidates.
There will be, not might be.
There will be, in your own words. So there will be a number of independent candidates. And that you're saying, there may be not the president they want, but parliament is where a lot of change is likely to be seen. So in your final word as we wrap it up, if the country changes, who gets into parliament? Will we have solved most of the problems that we are facing politically as we wrap it up?
Yes. Cynthia, if you've seen, the people that passed the finance bill is not the president, but the members of parliament. So that house is the house that must be cleaned first. And it is general cleaning. General. That house must be cleaned. And should we clean that house, the president will have no power to whip us in a particular direction. Therefore, we shall have freed the legislature where the law is made. The laws are made. And therefore, we shall have a president who cannot command the members of parliament to vote in a particular way. Therefore, the president will be forced to work in accordance to the constitution. The president will be forced to work in accordance to what is right with the people. And I am assuring you, Cynthia, this parliament, you shall have a parliament that will have sane people. A parliament that will have people who vote independently, unlike the current one that we have, that can only depend on political direction from a political party. Not on matter policies. Policies that are there to help the common mwananchi should be voted for. Policies that are there to harass the common mwananchi must not be voted for, no matter who has brought the policy. And as a country, we are in a very, very sad state. Because right now, if the president wants to pass any form of a bill with the current political setting, that bill will sail through. Because the opposition will be whipped to vote in a particular direction, the government will be whipped, and then we are left with Kalonzo Musyoka, who only has a maximum of 13 MPs, who cannot impact.
All right, thank you very much. Leon Harun is a political analyst and commentator. Thank you for coming in and just shedding light concerning the space of the youth in the country's future, whether political landscape or social or economic as well. But, of course, this is a political country. Everyone is a politician one way or the other. And so that is where really it bites a lot for Kenya. And we hope that you've been able to have such an informative session this morning. So thank you very much for watching. In case you've missed this broadcast, you can rewatch it across our social media platforms. That is on EBN TV. Keep the conversation going on X as well. The hashtag is Morning Live. You can tag us at TVEBN at It's Nanjala. So I wrap it up at that point. Have yourself a wonderful morning. God bless. My name is Cynthia Nanjala.